Hi, Brigade teams. I have a pleasure today to have Jennifer Childs, our very own Jennifer Childs, here from Code for America, talking to you about developing and cultivating relationships for corporate donations. Jennifer joined Code for America as our Senior Manager of Corporate Partnerships in November of 2014. She recently served as an Associate Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations at the University of California in San Francisco, managing major gifts and sponsorships from corporate partners. Prior to UCSF, Jennifer developed and managed the West Coast corporate portfolio for the Tufts School of Business at Dartmouth. This position, of course, was a natural extension of Jennifer's work following her role as Program Manager at Tufts Center for Digital Strategies, where she significantly expanded partnerships with both alumni and corporations operating in tech, media, telco, and managed the center's programs serving CIOs, CISOs of Global 500 companies. Jennifer's interest in technology began at the University of Texas in Austin, where she explored the intersection of culture and technology as a student in the Accelerated Communications Technical Lab. Jennifer holds a BS in Communications and her MA work engagement, identity, and policy. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you so much for doing this. I know there's so much wealth of information that you hold when it comes to corporate partnerships and building those relationships that I thought, you know what, we don't have to look outside of CFA to find an expert. We have our own homegrown one right here. So thank you so much for doing this today.
It's my
Brigade.
It's my pleasure to be here, Shakira. Thanks for asking me.
Sure. And I know that the Brigade team members, I've spoken informally to a few of them, and they sing your praises and they know your work and how much effort has gone into cultivating these, a lot of these corporate relationships from scratch, or just maintaining and cultivating the existing ones. So if you can give us a little bit, now I've actually spoken to them about corporate donations and sponsorships, but it'd be nice if I can actually hear from you, excuse me, especially since you positioned yourself with CFA as the front runner in terms of managing those relationships. I'm going to dive right in with the question. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'd say one of the first questions would be, would you briefly explain the difference between a corporate donation and a corporate sponsorship? And in your experience, are those terms ever interchangeable?
So I will answer the question, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach. So for me, when I think about opportunities with companies, there are really four specific types of opportunities that come up. One is an in-kind support. Another is a sponsorship. Then we have gifts from companies, and then there are grants from companies. And this language is interchangeable from a company's perspective. They sometimes confound all of these words and bake them into the same thing, but the deliverables or the contractual language attached to any type of contribution for a company helps define which one of the sort of four types of partnerships they're actually committing to. So I can say that there are a rank order of the ideal scenario for securing funds or securing support from a company. And from my perspective, I'm measuring that based on how much you have to do in order to get the funds. The very best opportunity is something called a corporate gift, which is what it sounds like. They give you money. There's nothing tied to it. It's just funds. And that is like the ideal scenario. If a company is talking gift, yes. The range can be pretty broad. It can be from really small dollar amounts all the way up to significant dollar amounts. But gifting language means that they don't ask for anything in return. It's just something to help support your work. The second type of sort of ideal scenario would be, and again, this is in rank order, is in-kinds. So an in-kind gift from a company is typically like a product play. They want to give some sort of opportunity for, in this case, a brigade to use or access their technology. And for the most part, there's nothing tied to it. Ideally, they may like to see an acknowledgement, and something that you can do to help incentivize folks to give in kinds is to maybe suggest writing a blog if you decide to actually pick up and use their technology. But that's something that you can offer as opposed to something that they explicitly require of you. It goes a long way to write a blog if you did decide to actually use the technology. And it's a great way to sort of extend partnerships in the long run with companies and potentially even grow them. Then we sort of transition into the types of opportunities and partnerships that have a higher level of commitment. And the next level, from my perspective, is a sponsorship, which is an explicit quid pro quo. It means I'm giving you X dollar amounts, and it's to deliver very specific outcomes, typically for their marketing team. Sponsorships are transactions. It's a deal-making process. They give X dollar amount for Y. It's transparent. So there's nothing left on the table. Everything is laid out. And then I think from my point of view, one of the more complex, but oftentimes higher dollar amount opportunities comes with grant making opportunities from companies. The grant making has language in it that has very clear deliverables, and you know that you're in a grant conversation if they're asking for financial overviews to be delivered at the end of a year, specifically if it's tied to how people's hours are spent, so time allocations relative to spend. Again, to come back to the beginning and like your exact question, all of these words are interchanged, and sometimes, frankly, the people on the company side don't exactly know what it is that they're offering. And sometimes on the Code for America side or on the Brigade side, you may not also sort of know where you fit within these four opportunities. But typically you can start to become a little bit more discerning / have a little more clarity based on what it is they expect back from you. So again, the ideal scenario is a gift. Second tier may be something like an in-kind sponsorship, or in-kind gift, excuse me. Then there's a sponsorship. And then you've got the grant. Companies typically give more on the grant side, so upwards of, let's say, $250,000 plus. But they're much harder to get. So I'll add that caveat in.
That is definitely helpful, and I know they would all love that $250,000.
Yeah.
I would. Okay, thank you for that. So my next question to you would, so knowing all of that now, and I'm a Brigade team member, and I'm fundraising, and I'm going to go after these corporate donations. I'm going to go after that gift because, as you said, wow, it doesn't sound like there are any tangible, expected, specific deliverables from that gift. And so I'm going to probably need quite a few of them. So where should I start focusing my research efforts when I'm prospecting certain corporate donations? Should I go online? Is there a magazine? Or a dedicated website? Where can I start looking for something like that?
So the first place that I recommend you look is within your brigade. So look across to see which companies are already tied to your brigade, i.e., who do people work for that are actually participating in your brigade? If they happen to be technology companies, that's great, but not all opportunities lie with technology companies. You may find that there's a great sponsor in a non-tech company that just wants to be involved and engaged with the community as a whole. So looking and expanding your horizon beyond tech, media, telco, and also looking at retail companies. They would probably love to have an opportunity to get involved, and they're not tapped nearly as often. So I'd say your first sort of opportunity is in your own backyard, literally the folks that are showing up at the brigade meetings. Secondarily, it's starting to, I think, isolate what types of technology you might want to have as part of your brigade sort of portfolio. That's a way of entering in to discover which local companies might be able to help support the work. Most companies are really excited about the opportunity to plug and play their technology. So that's a really easy conversation to begin and can often segue into something more significant. Speaking specifically about a gift, those conversations, in my experience, happen usually based on relationships, so established relationships. It's very rare that a gift is an outcome of a cold call or an email. That's a sort of in the development world a part of a nurtured relationship. It's an extension of a relationship that's likely already in place or seeded for a little while. Grant making, on the other hand, is something you can sleuth and discover. Using websites like the Foundation Center and going into companies' corporate social responsibility portals on their websites to find out who might be willing to give a grant or a sponsorship. So those are the ways in which You can identify sponsorships and grants. It's like a website search. Foundation Center is an organized database that you can help refine searches based on geography, based on types of work that you're doing. And it will give you this sort of itemized list of companies that are giving either by grants or sponsorships in your area or in the range of work that you're interested in developing. So that can be a really, really great resource.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Got that.
Does that make
So
sense?
now,
I'm happy
yeah,
to.
absolutely. Yeah. I was kind of engrossed in your answer, so sorry about that. Yes.
Sure.
So I'm going to piggyback on that also. Now, and it was informative to know that a lot of, especially if I'm going after corporate gifts and corporate donations, because I have a feeling that many of the Brigade team members are actually going to go that route. In addition to the grants, but I think really it's the corporate gifts that I think they probably in the beginning will go after just because of the comfort level that they may have. So it's interesting to hear that many of those cold calls sometimes pan out, sometimes they don't. So my question then is, how do I start nurturing a relationship? How does that even begin? What if I don't have an established relationship with anyone, but I've identified a few companies in my neighborhood, large and small? Should I just reach out to the company? And if that's the case, is there a specific department I should go to or a person that I should ask for?
That's a great question. There are a couple of different ways to go about this. I think number one, let's just take, sort of the technology strategy approach, right? Like, what's the best medium for reaching out? Is it a phone call? Is it email? I've already indicated that the very best network you have is the individual personal one-to-one networks, but let's say you've exercised that, or you're interested, to your point, in a company that you have no relationship with. Phone calls don't really work that well. A blind call can maybe yield some fruit for you, but I think in this case, the best way to go about it is to go in through email. Go to an email address and help educate folks on the other end as to what the opportunity is. And in my opinion, what's worked really well for me anyway is to identify a sales exec, which I know there's some reticence around because we don't want it to be salesy and pitchy, but that person will have a vested interest in understanding what you're doing and the opportunity for the company. Now, there's another person sitting in the company, the marketing person, who's also going to have kind of a sales mentality, but maybe seeing it from a slightly different perspective around like PR, exposure to the community. And then you have another person in a company that's sitting in the CSR side of the house. So let's say the philanthropic side, that could be an opportunity for you to connect with. So you've got 3 different folks that will be interested in hearing about what you're doing. I think that it's probably best to approach them individually. So send individual emails out, and you can triangulate that way based on their response rate. And for me, again, what has worked really well is to be very casual in these emails. So think about your own bandwidth and how long you dedicate your visual attention span, right, to reading through emails. It's really not a lot of time. So what you want to be able to do is to grab someone's attention fast in the first frame of like the phone, of email, and to encourage them to respond. So something that I think doesn't work as well is starting off with a salutation like, "Dear Jane, I'm writing to let you know about this, ... So for most of us, when we see dear, and in my case, "Dear Jennifer," I immediately think they're going to sell me something that I never asked for, and I'm not interested. Moving on. If instead you consider doing something like, "Jane, we are a community organization where," or I'll reframe that. "Jane, have you heard of Code for America?" Link to Code for America. We are a part of the Brigade. Did you know there was a brigade that's sitting in your city? 42,000 strong. We're doing great work here. We would love to engage you. Actually, engage is almost too development-y. We would love to invite you to come and see what we're doing. So the first piece, the first engagement with a company is not necessarily an ask. It's an invitation for them to participate and to increase their own awareness around the work. Every Brigade person will probably sort of validate that when you walk into a Brigade meeting, the excitement is so contagious. It's awesome. Like that is what is your sort of compelling case. Granted, most people probably won't show up, so that's okay. The person's going to come back and say, wow, that's interesting, or they won't respond at all. For the person that comes back and says, that's interesting, but I can't make it, feed them more information. This is what we're working on. This is what we do. How might we get involved with your company? How would your company fit into this? Would this be interesting to you? And then I tend to end emails with, raise your hand if you'd like to know more about this. Because it takes the pressure off of that person to commit to a thing. And instead it feels still light. And it's like, I will come back to you and suggest some times to have a call or a meeting. The message itself shifts depending on which audience you're talking to. So if you're talking to the philanthropic person, the opportunity is for company X to get involved, to have more volunteers have a place to plug in, to help them understand how important civic technology is in their community and the impact and the outcomes. A marketing person or a PR person is going to be really interested in the story that they can tell by participating. So you talk about what you've already done, talk about the sort of projected projects going forward and the way it can be transformative for the community, and talk about visibility. If you've got any records of PR coverage, add that into the bottom of the email as links. I definitely discourage attachments, just link things up. Then if you've got a salesperson, if you are willing to share and disclose the folks that you work with from the city, that's a great thing to add in, to talk about leverage, to talk about innovation, to talk about impact, and the role that that company or that product can play in helping move the needle forward around a project that you have on the table. So it's 3 different types of messages. All of them, I encourage sort of consideration of delivery that's fairly light, really quick, in and out for the first one. You may have asked me this question, but I'm just going to jump in.
Please.
I only go back 3 times maximum. I feel
That is the next question.
awesome. I feel like once you hit 4, you become an irritation.
Okay.
3, it's like that first, sort of nudge of I am inviting you to learn about a thing. Second nudge is did you know about the numbers of folks? Actually, I'd actually bake in the numbers of the brigades in the first email, but to go a little deeper in the second email. And then the third one is, hey, the meeting is tonight, or the meeting is tomorrow. Come check it out. If no one's responding within the first 3 emails, they may be busy, they may not be interested, or it may be a great thing that they've just tabled and they're going to come back to you later. It's best just to let sleeping dogs lie, rather than become sort of an irritation. So that's my suggestion.
That is fantastic. That was a great suggestion. Thank you. Because I forgot to mention, actually, as I've been speaking to brigades and doing the fundraising, I did forget to actually let them know about the CSR. And so even you telling, giving this kind of informal overview of just talking it through of how, and the brigades team members I know will appreciate this kind of informal talking through of how to start the email, what to say in it, what to put in it, was so helpful. Thank you for that. And the time frame, that was going to be my next question, because I thought, okay, so now the brigade team does all this. How many times should they do this before they, I don't want them to also get a sense that they're feeling disheartened because no one is responding. So that about 3 times is very helpful to know.
And I should underscore that most companies, if they're aware at Code for America and the Brigade, they're so excited to hear from you. They're excited to hear from you. You're offering them something that they want. And that mindset transforms the tone of a conversation. You are going to them with an opportunity. This opportunity is very rare. Most companies are inundated with requests that look a lot alike, that don't have nearly the same sort of exposure, impact, accessibility to users, etc. So I'm sort of like, straightening up, because I feel really compelled to say that at every brigade is creating an opportunity that a company wants to know about. So if they don't come back, let them go, because there are going to be other companies that are going to be so excited to come in and support this narrative, period, whether or not they're a technology company or not. So don't be disheartened. I can say that you do have to have a little bit of thick skin, but start off by creating, one way of doing it, and actually didn't mention this earlier, is like, it's really not particularly rigorous approach, but Wikipedia has a full list of every company that's in your city, in your metro area. Grab that list and then start looking and figuring out, who do you know there? Is there logical alignment? It can be that simple. The equation of getting commitments is actually not super challenging. It's just a volume issue. It's a bandwidth issue. The idea is to get as refined as possible to the most likely folks that will give, so that you can spend your time well, right? And pursuing opportunities that have the most alignment. And by alignment, I mean, there are companies that you want to work with, and there are companies that have an interest in working with the brigades. But there's so many more companies that I suspect are in a metro area that you haven't even thought of. And by looking at a list like Wikipedia, you can just boom, 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 go straight down and have something to work from, rather than trying to create the list on your own. So that's something I should have mentioned earlier, but it's a low-hanging fruit sort of tool that you can also leverage.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned it at all. Doesn't matter if it was the beginning, middle, or end of this conversation, as long as it's mentioned, because yeah, that was helpful too. So now I did the Wikipedia as a Brigade team member, and by the third email, I got a yes.
Yeah.
I got a response. They're coming. It's going to be an in-person meeting with the corporate contact. I'm stoked, very excited. If they invite me to their offices, say they're not able to come to one of our hack nights or one of our events, if they actually invite us to the office to speak to them and actually get to know more about them, do I need to bring anything with me? Any kind of collateral materials with me? And the second part of that question is there anything in that meeting that I should emphasize? What's more, in your experience, what do you think is the most important thing they may want to hear from me?
Sure. The answer is yes, you do want to bring stuff with you. Even in this kind of high-tech world that we're operating in, people love paper in a meeting. They like to hold something. They want to have something tangible. It's also a really great way for them to hand off relevant information to another person that may be the decision maker that's not in the meeting, or to reference back and take notes on. So I highly encourage you to take a one-pager, which is a description of your brigade, a description of the projects you've already worked on, or if you haven't worked on anything yet, what you intend to work on. If you have partners in the city, include that as a byline. And then also having a footer, or maybe its own separate one-pager if you need it as your own personal point of reference, or something as collateral to support this conversation, a one-pager on Code for America. So there's a little bit of context as to where the brigades are in relationship to Code for America, and also just to give that kind of national overview. The one-pager for Code for America is not necessary, and it shouldn't dominate the conversation. It's just a baseline kind of foundation of how you have been, or how the brigade has been formed, and gives a little bit of structure around what should hopefully lead to a financial conversation in terms of financial fiscal sponsorship. So coming in with a one-pager that is describing your work and describe the leaders, who's the captain, et cetera, people you've worked with at the city, and any work that you've done so far. I think that that's a great thing to do. I think in terms of preparation, you should definitely be thinking with a strategic hat on. Why is this a good conversation for this person and this company? What is the opportunity for them? And mind you, you are bringing an opportunity to them. So this is not selling out the brigade. This is approaching a conversation in a way that supports your own goals, period. I'm underscoring that because sitting across from you, even the best intended philanthropic person sitting in a company will still have a filter on many cases as to how to position a company in the best way. So it's totally appropriate to position yourself with authority and hold the line around the type of conversation you want to have. So I just want to make sure that that's very, very sort of support, like if that's a line of approach to a conversation that I'm supporting. We do that often from Code for America. There are often moments where it's a company may say, we'd like to do this. This is what we'd like in return. And it's something that doesn't fit for us. And so be willing to walk away from the conversation in a way that doesn't burn bridges, but allows for you to come out with integrity and feeling as though you're holding your own mission statement as your priority versus moving cash to the priority line. Repeat the second half of your question. I'm sorry, Shakira, I sort of diverted.
No, sure. That's actually, you covered it. I was asking, the first part was, should I bring some collateral material with me? And in your experience, what's, the most important thing they would want to hear, or should I emphasize? But it sounds like, just talking about the work that I'm doing. And it was really helpful to also hear what you're saying, that we love Code for America, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the forefront of the conversation. Really speak to what your brigade is doing and how you are making an impact.
Absolutely. Talk about the impact that you have at the local level. Your local companies care about that. And that's actually something to be really, have a point of distinction around. Local companies will care about different things than national companies. Not to say that a national company in your metro area doesn't care about the local work, but a slight tweak to the conversation that you would bring to a national company. Let's say we're talking about Citibank as an example, or Compass. They're in your neighborhood. You have somebody that's sitting within that organization that will care a lot about the local work, but it will be worthwhile to bring to that national company the fact that the brigades now are 42,000 volunteers strong, like painting this picture that you're a part of a collective and an effort, that you're not a one-off, that you are making huge impact in your local community alongside other brigades across the country that are doing the same work or similar work, and that the opportunity is to fold into this bigger movement. And I'm creating some distinction between the local and the national, because when you're bringing in that collateral material, it will tweak a little bit depending on what kind of company you're talking to. So if you're talking to folks, let's say in San Francisco, we have sort of a city law that you can't have many chains in the city. So I'm thinking of like a local bakery that may be really interested in providing in-kinds, like with food, for example, right? So you're going to go to that person, that entity, and explain to them the impact that you're having in San Francisco, as an example. Thank you, Code for San Francisco, to say why it's important for them to support the work of the brigade versus going to Starbucks. Everyone has a Starbucks. You have somebody that's going to be making a decision about the local support, but that person may also have to make a bigger case around why, and having that larger framework around the big picture will be really helpful in moving that conversation forward.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's so great. I'm so excited about this interview. I'm learning so much, and I know the brigades are really actually going to appreciate this because a lot of brigades around the country have a nice funding landscape of a mixture of individuals, corporates, and foundations. But many of these cities have more corporations that they can go after. And then that's it's kind of foreign territory for a lot of folks, even within the fundraising world. For fundraisers, sometimes that's a foreign territory. So all of this it's extremely helpful. Now,
one addition to add in, Shakira, is just around the timing of a meeting. I tend to schedule 30 minutes.
Okay.
So they're fast. I shouldn't say fast. Fast is not the right word to describe it. They're effective, strategic, outcomes-oriented conversations. The assumption is the person on the other side is busy and you don't want to take too much time. In all likelihood, they have more time to give you. But oftentimes, in my experience, asking for an hour for a meeting can be prohibitive to actually securing the meeting, especially if you don't know them well yet. If you know them a little better, an hour is fine. If you're worried that you can't get through it all in 30 minutes, the person on the other side, if they're interested, they'll stay with you to finish the meeting if they have time, or there'll be very clear follow-ups, and then do those follow-ups in a very timely manner and wrap the conversation up and have a next step as part of that conversation. I find that having some sort of urgency strategic condensed conversations can be very effective versus having conversations that meander and roll, especially if you're not as practiced in making the ask. Oftentimes you can find yourself 10 minutes into a conversation with a funder and you've said it all. You've said everything that you can say. Because you're going fast and like adrenaline is up and you're trying to navigate and figure it out. 30 minutes is a really safe timeline to put forward what you have to say for the first 15 or so, and then you have time for some Q&A. It's usually the arc of a conversation, and this will be intuitive for many. First few minutes are casual intros. Then you're going to jump in and say the thing. For the most part, I imagine 10 to 15 minutes is plenty of time to talk about the work that you're doing and how that you'd like folks to be involved, why it's important, why it matters, and then be quiet. Which I'm saying a little tongue-in-cheek, but seriously, one of the most effective strategies for securing funds and being a productive development person is to know when to be quiet, to let the person on the other side of the table process what it is that you've said, then ask questions, because that's when you learn what they care about. When they ask you questions, it's like this really great sort of insight into their constraints, to what it is they need to bring forward to the decision maker. They may not say this explicitly, but their questions are giving you the kind of guidelines of what they need to be able to bring back in order to make a case to support the brigade. So be sure to be quiet and give them a chance to ask you questions back.
Okay. Now, I only have about 2 more questions for you. One is, because I'm so into this conversation now, I just thought about this. So what if we get a yes? Yes, they're going to support us. Yes, we're going to get the money. Yay. Is there, in your experience, what's the timeline that usually happens after the meeting and we get the yes, our brigade is going to be, receiving this gift? Is that usually about a month out, 2 months? What is that time frame? Because as the brigades now are starting to do their strategic planning and their budget, it'd be helpful for them to know what's that leeway, what's the runway of pipeline of how they should also start putting, because they're actually going to focus on individuals, they're going to focus on some grants, but they're putting corporate in there. So as they're constructing this, for 2016, should they say, okay, in January, February, we're going to go after these corporations, maybe in March they'll say yes, we may not get the check for another month, 2 months? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it depends on the size of the company. Smaller companies usually can cut checks faster than the larger companies. When I say faster, my experience, most bigger companies, they're totally practiced in seeing contract language, gift-making language that requires them to deliver the dollar amounts within 30 days of the agreement being signed. So I encourage the brigades to write in a byline into any kind of agreement language that within 30 days of said agreement being put into place, that you'll receive X dollar amount. And that will give a forcing function for a larger company to actually close the money for you. So I think that you should reasonably expect it to be 30 days or less. If you think it extends beyond that, then that's, you're starting to get into the financial processes and side of the house of a big company, which is always like, painful territory. So closing 30 days or less is the ideal. And for most companies, that's what they're able to do.
Oh, okay. That's helpful. So my very last question to you is CFA really encourages the brigades to seek donations, the gifts that you spoke about earlier, versus sponsorships for a host of reasons, but I know that they still pursue them. And so I want to speak to those that really still do pursue them. In your opinion, are there any few sponsorship perks the brigades may offer the corporations without promising them specific deliverables? I know earlier in the conversation you talked about maybe they can come, they can speak. I know a few that a brigade member that I spoke to recently is using is logo placement, speaking at meetups and events. Off the top of your head, can you think of anything else that they can offer?
Yeah, if you actually use their technology, the blog goes so far. Companies love having a blog because they can pick it up and share it out. tweeting about them. Thank you tweets. That's also a great way of just showing a little acknowledgement for their support. The blog, logo placement is a great thing to do. Inviting based on your own timeline. Again, they may push for certain things, but you can set the guidelines of saying, sure, once a quarter, a speaker can come and talk about the work that we'll talk about work that they're interested in. Depending on the size of the sponsorship, you can also add in any kind of deliverable that you feel that you can meet. If there's a project that you want to pursue and it's something that is in alignment with the core of the brigade, sponsorship language / contractual language is totally fine to bake in. Just make sure that you actually can deliver against it. There are examples of companies that we still have great relationships with, but the tenor and the tone of the relationship has adjusted over the years based on our ability to meet the contractual obligations. And so I just will flag that as you're drafting contract language, whether it be sponsorships, grants and gifts, et cetera, as to keep in mind that the interest of the brigade will wax and wane in terms of like the projects that you may be interested in today versus tomorrow. So when you're building language with a sponsor, unless there's a specific project that you're delivering right now, be fairly broad in what it is that you commit to them so that you can really follow through with it and everybody can walk away at the end of the year feeling good about the partnership. I feel like that's really it. I mean, we've been conservative around our policy and what we give to companies for their support of the brigades. And I think that's been a healthy line. I would really encourage the brigades to be measured in what it is that they offer, because this sort of tone can filter in when you've got a lot of corporate presence that changes it from feeling like a volunteer opportunity to I'm being sold stuff. So keeping that in mind, particularly if you have a lot of sponsors, make a map, make a calendar, and architect, what makes most sense based on the number of sponsors and the number of brigade members, et cetera, and what kind of exposure you really want to offer. But I think that for most companies, I will say from their perspective, the more you offer them, the better. It's really all about what it is you're comfortable doing. And then whatever you commit to, be mindful to follow through with it. Even if it's small, I guarantee you that somebody on the other side of the house is tracking that thing and they care. And being able to deliver even the smallest things increases the ability or increases the level of trust between you and that entity, that partner. And that trust will only build forward to grow beyond an in-kind, a sponsorship, and may end up translating into a gift or a grant. So those little details and the commitments that you make are very important, and companies in particular take them seriously. So be sure to craft something that you can really stand behind and commit to, and then actually do.
That's, I think, why CFA has been, it's not so much discouraging, but encouraging the gifts because of everything you just said. I think it's more of a protective, from national headquarters, just being a little more protective because, as you know, those nuances can get really hairy very quickly. And as a protective measure for the brigade, it's a thing where we say, okay, guys, we know that, probably around like National Hack Day, Civic Hack Day and Code Across, we realize sponsorships may come into play, but to actually have it as an arsenal in your toolbox for fundraising, it probably is best to stay clear of really depending on those so much and going after that corporate gift where there's no strings attached, so to say. It's a gift, it's a contribution, which feels even better. So Jennifer, I want to be very respectful of your time right now. And I've asked you a slew of questions, and I thank you so much. You've been so comprehensive in answering them, so generous with your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know the brigades are going to want to throw you a big hug and a kiss, so thank you. Is there, and so my questions are done, but I'm happy to continue to keep the floor open if you had any extra tidbits that I didn't ask you about that you think it's very important that they know about as they start on this journey. It's a little, it's exciting, but it's an anxious time for them also. And I want to be able to make sure that they feel as supported as they possibly can on this journey. So
I think the only thing I would add, I mean, there's two things that come to mind. One is every dollar counts. So there can be this notion that you have to raise like big dollar amounts, and big dollar amounts, particularly depending on your geography in the country or your experience in fundraising, at 5,000 or 2,500, that's a lot of money. And it can be daunting to ask for that kind of money. Take it in bites, take it in bite size. If that's, the more you practice asking, the easier it will be. And I know that's a bit of like a thing that's offered very often, you know, for folks, but it really is true. It will become easier over time to ask. I also would encourage folks to think about the dollar amount that you're asking for. So let's say we're talking beyond $50 or $100 or $250, depending on the company that you're going to. It's not a lot for them, and you're giving them tremendous value for the amount that you're asking for. Tremendous value. And I'm saying that with like absolute enthusiasm and passion and commitment, because it's true. Walking in with that attitude, and I mentioned this earlier, of you have something that they want, versus you going in and feeling like you're kind of scratching at the edges, trying to get things that you need. While that may feel like your truth, and it may be your truth, what it is that you're walking in and offering to an entity, a partner, is a tremendous opportunity. So before walking in the room, really pulling in that authority that you're giving them a chance to be a part of something big and meaningful will transform the tone of the conversation and the outcome. And beyond that, go for it. You'll see a lot of people saying no, but it's because they don't understand, and they'll learn. There'll be a lot of people that do understand. So just keep going back to the table, coming back to the drawing board. Arm yourself with the one-pagers. That will also be a good thing for you to look at when you kind of lose your mind in the middle of the conversation. Okay. That will be a good point of reference. And with time, it will become something that feels more exciting and like an opportunity if it does feel daunting now. And for those of you that are practiced in the ask, go for it. You'll knock it out really fast, and you'll be done for the year. So I'm really confident that every brigade across the country will have champions in their community that will support this effort. Good luck to everyone. And if you need anything from Code for America, we are here as a resource. And I'm so hopeful that this session has been helpful. And if nothing else, has armed you with the sense of authority as you go through and start fundraising for yourselves. You guys have so much to be proud of, and every community in the country benefits from you being there. So keep that in mind as you walk into every conversation you have with partners.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much. And thank you for saying that. I know they know, but it's nice to hear it, that they have so much to offer, and that they're vital and they're important, and the work that they do is transformative. So thank you for reiterating that for them, and to give them that confidence, because again, that's part of the support that it's this and that. So thank you. And thank you for your time again. We're going to wrap it up and say thanks. Happy holidays to you. Have a wonderful
holidays, and best of luck, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you.